So, as I was saying before I had to change my batteries, this start to this dump was interesting. This guy here is actually a pretty rare bird, and I'll mention more of that coming up here. The dog is already finding it quite boring. A local Quincy med. There's the maraschino and the 2 roses lime juices. This guy is AUGAUER'S Vital Drops from Chicago, and then it says AUGAUER on the back side, or AUGAUER. I think they just kind of squashed it together and called it AUGAUER. But I think it's like Augustus Gower, something like that. Made a beautiful green bitters bottle. Anyway, the Vital Drops, I actually sent a picture off to a major bitters collector, and he didn't think it was worthy of being called a bitters bottle. I think it was like Angostura bitters, where you put in some drops. And originally Angostura bitters was a medicine. As you may have noticed in one of my most previous videos. I'm going to kind of go through this sort of quickly because there's an awful lot of pictures here. And some of them are just self-explanatory, especially after I explained them. Here's a Kleindienst Hannibal hutch, one of the first ones I ever dug up. I've dug up dozens of them since, but it's a mug base. Those are always sweet. And a closer shot of the AUGAUER bitters. I'm going to call it a bitters. Fluted neck. Gosh darn it. Wish my damn computer would behave. Close-up of a Quincy med. And a nice little diamond ink. Those are fairly common, but they're real cool because they're teeny tiny guys. At the time I didn't realize just how common these J.J. Flynn Quincy sodas were. I have found them 100 miles west into Missouri. Yeah, whoever was their distributor did a hell of a job. Here's a close-up of the maraschino eagle. Looks Germanic to my eye. And a closer shot of the AUGAUER drops. I still have that. And an in situ shot of a large quart-sized soda. Can't remember which one it is. From Illinois, so it's probably an Aqua J.J. Flynn. They came in amber as well, and the amber ones are a bit more collectible to my eye. This was an amazing city dump. I mean, this thing went down in places, 15, 20 feet. I did have a very close call with a cave-in that I will briefly describe later. I'm just going to roll through some of the more common stuff. That's a Father John's medicine bottle with some really beautiful iridescence, rainbow, embossed on the other side, barely, as you can see there. And some dirty finds that eventually got cleaned. Just not in the moment. And more dirty finds that found their way to the back porch. A lot of these ended up in buckets, they're just slicks. These were the beginnings of a Coca-Cola frenzy. We were digging straight-sided tool-top Quincy, Illinois sodas, and they were piled in like this, real close to the sidewalk. very different from the rest of this neighborhood dump. And there were some interesting ones. There were, I noticed there was some differences with how the looping is. There were two distinct types. I think one that had a small tight loop and another one that had a larger loop, I think. Anyway, the first day me and this other guy dug 18 of them. We each got 9, and I came back the next day by myself and I dug 18 alone. So I ended up with 27 of these bad boys. There you go. You can see in the second C there, that's a big fat loop, whereas this one's a little bitty loop. So clearly they used a different mold. And I can't remember, one was considerably scarcer than the other. But I'll be darned if I can remember. And sadly I don't have any of those remaining. Some Mills Brothers and Durholt, a variation of pseudo, I'd call them pseudo hutches, because most of the ones I've dug had a metal wire around them holding in a cork, similar to the beer bottle closures. Never did find one with a Hutchinson stopper. Now, there's a nice little smattering of odds and ends pulled out of the dump. This shard here was ponnelled, it looks like an amber fruit jar with a open ponnel mark. And next to it's a little puff neck and shoulder. Nothing too whoop there. Those quart size guys are tough to find, especially the Mills Brothers, and that one was a Burke from Iowa, crown top. That's my dog yawning in the background. She's not impressed whatsoever. So we'll move on to the more interesting stuff that she may not yawn at. Yeah. Anyway, AUGAUER'S Distillery. I can't remember. I think they're from Chicago or St. Louis. St. Louis, I think. A 3-piece mold, pretty common. $5 on a good day. Lydia Pinkham's and a Palmolive and a few other cosmetics. Couple of bitters. I think the Lashes was machine made. So yeah, getting up into the 1910s. J. Berkey and Company. I have dug a slew of them in this dump I've been digging in more lately. And they're all the Hutchinson styles. Mills Brothers. Sipes from Chicago. Pretty common beer. L&M from Quincy. They were, I can't remember what. There was L&B and L&M soda bottles. Pretty common. But not as common as the J.J. Flynn's, I'll tell you what. Here's a nice grouping of some mix. That green guy on the right, that's a beer, I believe. Un-embossed, but what a killer color. Would have made a great embossed soda. Or anything embossed on it would have been great. These two I still have. The bugging was a insect killer. And the one on the left was the Elysian Drug Company out of Chicago, I think? Detroit. Out of Detroit. I was real excited when I dug it up because I wasn't very familiar with it. Yeah, Elysian Manufacturing Company, chemists and whatever, perfumers, I guess, Detroit, USA. Unfortunately, they're pretty common, but what a killer bottle. And the elephant in a tuxedo I gave to a friend who collects candy containers, knowing darn well it was a pretty rare one. But it now resides in a very prestigious candy container collection. Yeah, it just looks cool, and it's got a ground top. That's an early one. This one, Chumley and Son, 3rd and Chestnut Street, I think, in Quincy. A little mini scratch jug. Sadly, my pictures are very blurry of it, and I ended up selling it to a local fellow in Quincy that he's a hard negotiator. I didn't get near as much as it's worth, but I thought, you know what, I'm opening up the floodgates, thinking I was going to recoup some down the road. Oh, hell no. 3rd and Chestnut in Quincy, which was the site of an old, what looks like an old grocery store. That's a heck of a smattering for a couple of days worth of digging. There's this green bottle right in the middle here, Figgins benzoin lotion. And it took me forever to figure out where Figgins was, and it's a drugstore in Quincy. But I hadn't dug one, and I didn't recognize what it was until I dug up the Figgins drugstore, which said where it was from. A nice, beautiful cobalt blue drugstore bottle with no embossing. A Palmer's cologne vial type. The common Laxol Witter Springs water. This one I really liked, a Cranotonic scalp food. Kind of looks like a whiskey bottle, you know, with a whiskey neck. And oh, just a smell, you know, cobalt blue ink. There's the Chumley mini scratch jug that's actually worth about $300, and I got a fraction of that. And a smattering of other cool things that are fairly common. Close-up of some of the commoners, the Rubifoam and Simmons liver regulator. I think that's the small size, and I don't know what happened to it because I don't find it in my collection anywhere. And the smaller sizes are pretty tough to come by. That amber one in the middle with the strange shape is a wild root from about 1915. But yeah, this was a pretty good haul for just a few days of digging. A clear poison bottle, which I don't have. I don't know what the heck happened to that. It's hard to find them clear. They're always cobalt blue or amber or some damn thing. Figgins I ended up trading to Brandon Smith over in Quincy, since he's living there and collecting Quincy stuff. So again, I figured it belonged in a better collection than mine. Besides that, I got a pretty cool bottle in trade. It was one I had dug up, but I lost in the pick. This one's just kind of a fairly common grouping. You got the Spiker's Dandruff Cure. I dug up a couple of these, so I got one of them in my cure collection still. All the rest of these are common except for this bad boy, and I left them on the pile. It was just a ball jar, you know, and I'm like, oh God, a cruddy old ball jar. And right as I was leaving, I took another look at it and I thought, well, it does have an old clamp style top to it. Looked a little different, so I drug it home, almost left it behind. I looked it up in the book and it was like $400. It's like the original ball jar mason. I was shocked. I didn't think a ball jar was worth anywhere close to that. And again, that was, you know, 15 years ago. So the Spiker Dandruff Cure, that's a cool bottle. And as far as jars go, I mean, you know, I just didn't see it in the moment. So that's a lesson for everybody. You know, even if it doesn't seem all that cool or you don't recognize it as being such, lug it home anyway. Look it up in the book. You might be shocked. I sure was. There's a hole in the dump there that I had somehow punched out and started digging down. Ended up looking like my bottom of my shoe shape there. Typical dump digging rule, follow the glass, you know, whatever direction it starts petering out, turn around and go the other way, find the glass, you know. Oddly enough, they seem to have had some rhyme and reason to it. There's a couple of wannabe diggers that never did. No, that's not true. They did some digging, not like me though. They'd show up just to kind of watch the old guy and go, whoa, he's really down deep. A couple of interesting milk bottles from Quincy. The Quincy Sanitary Milk Company apparently was a rare one. I ended up selling those to a local guy, older fellow who grew up on a dairy, and his family owned a dairy, and so he had a heck of a collection, I guess. I never did get to see it. He passed away not long after I met him, so yeah, at least I was able to help him enjoy his collection even more with a couple of rare finds. These those McAvoys are pretty common. Close-up of the Durst brothers, I think, originally manufactured a pumpkin seed over in Quincy, and then they switched over to dairy. And I don't know, milk bottles just don't do it for me. They're all too generic looking, like collecting bowling pins or something. The Fruit Keeper was pretty cool. I've dug up one of those before. The amber wax sealer was, I think it was McCully and Company on the base. And because my lovely camera only holds, you know, a video for so long, that I end up losing the continuity of the video. It shuts itself down automatically. Larkin Company. The older ones say Larkin Soap Company on them. But that's still a beautiful smelling salts bottle with the original stopper. I still can't get enough of the Japanese polished bottle. I gave it to a buddy of mine who fell in love with it, and I only hung on to it for a while, and then knowing that it was broken bothered me too much. But you know, what a cool bottle for a shoe polish. And I'm sure they didn't last terribly long because, you know, it's such a fancy bottle for such a cheap product, you know. I mean, who's going to spend 3 times as much for shoe polish as you can for a cheap bottle of the same stuff, you know? This little cluster has an interesting... This guy came out of the lot near where this one fellow owned a portion of the lot. What was going on with the lot, too, I forgot to mention, is they were building homes for humanity. And they were going in and digging down enough for a basement for modern homes. And the property that butted up against the homes for humanity was owned by this fellow who was more than willing and offered to use his backhoe and trench out a big old trench for us. And when he was starting to trench, this bad boy pops up, and it's got an open panel on it, older than the dirt he was digging up. And the flask in front here, registered full pint, but it's also embossed from New Rochelle, New York. And you guys from New York will probably recognize it for what it is. I've got a close-up picture of it. That pottery thing is a match holder. And I don't know why my computer's decided to do a slideshow on its own, but bear with me because Grandpa's still trying to figure out the technology here. Nice open panel on this thing. It came rolling out and I grabbed it real quick. Fred Stodemeyer's Wholesale Liquors, New Rochelle, New York. I ended up selling that on the internet and I didn't get too much for it, so I assume it's a common one. Fine wines and liquors. But still, it was cool to dig a flask that had embossing on it. I mean, 99% of the ones I find are plain Janes. This guy was a match holder, probably sat on a barroom table or the bar itself. In perfect condition, just a little bit of staining from being buried. And a smattering of, again, some more commoners. Got a Wyeth dose bottle, a Palmer's, a couple of inks, and what's that one? I can't remember. My brain is old and decrepit. And a few doll heads and junk. Typical stuff you'll find in a dump. Keysby and Madison. Brr, that's what I was trying to think of. Charles Higgins Master Ink. That was pretty cool. You don't find Master Inks embossed in dumps all the time. And Proton Nucleon. This stuff, they come in an amber bottle as well. The exact same embossing and everything. And apparently they were a... oh shoot. I can't remember what it was for now. A strange malady, like diabetes or something weird. I really liked the Charles Higgins. I ended up selling that with a bunch of inks. That Hofstadter's was pretty old. It had a giant Q on the base, which was unusual. There's one of those injection brows from Paris. Those were used for gonorrhea or STDs. A hard to find J.J. Flynn clear soda bottle. Those things are, you'll dig up 999 aqua ones before you'll find a clear one for certain. And There's one of those L&Bs. The other one was L&M, if you remember. Close-ups. And Hyde Breeder Brothers had 4 drugstores running at the same time in Quincy. I mean, they basically cornered the market for the most part. I think they had one, you know, north, south, east, and west. You couldn't hardly get away from them. Carbona products are a spot remover. They're a cleaning fluid. For the longest time, people didn't know what the heck they were. And this particular Mills Brothers soda bottle has a different kind of style top on it. It's not the normal looking soda bottle, and I've dug a couple of them, and they're tough to find. And the typical Pizzos. And a sample Foley and Company. And there's the first, I just dug up one a few weeks ago, a clear colored Piezo with the transitional top like the amber cousin. But the amber ones, until recently, I had always thought were machine made. But apparently there is a tool top one to match the tool top clear guy. And so I'm almost wondering if there isn't a machine made clear one. But so far I haven't heard a story about that. And the beer on the left has a castle embossed in it. Can't remember what the other embossing is on it, but that was found in a dirt pile after the dirt movers ran through it. Independent Brewing Association, that's what that's from. So there was a little bit of age in this dump, you know, on occasion. You'd come across an older beer, you know. That clear Piezo really threw me. That was exciting. The one I dug up this year was almost as exciting because I'd never seen another one before. And somebody had responded. They dug up a nest of them, both clear and amber, all tool top. And of course, I was more than happy to take too many pictures of it. The Benedictine bottle on the right, the big green guy, that thing weighs about 10 pounds. It's like a saddle flask or something. I mean, the thing, but it's not flat, it's round, but holy cow, you don't want to get clunked in the head. You don't want to get in a barroom brawl with a Benedictine monk, let me put it that way. They start swinging that thing, you better just leave the bar, you know, or the wine room, whatever you're drinking in with a monk, you know, I don't know. It's a cool bottle, but they're pretty common. One of the first handled mineral water jugs I've ever dug up without missing the handle or something else. Yeah, just an odd assortment of stuff. You know, you'd be digging along, pulling out fruit jars. Suddenly you're pulling out bitters, and next thing you know, you're pulling out inks. It was like, wow, scattered all over the place. No rhyme or reason to what they were throwing out together. Everything there is pretty common, except for those milk bottles. Those Quincy milks, even though I didn't get a lot of money for them, you just don't run into them that often. The Hogden dairy milks seem to be the most common. That common sense liniment from Quincy is common in the round size, but I don't recall seeing a squared off guy. But I suspect they're all fairly common. Omega oil vial there, those are cool. Milk and fruit jars. Fruit jars and milk. Close up of the stamping on the handled mineral water from over the pond somewhere, Poland or wherever. I can't read it. The Mother's Friend, I don't know if I still have the same one or not, but I've got one. I've dug them up, machine made and tooled. The one that I still have is a tool top. That's another one of those round Coroni bitters or something like that, similar to the Angostura. And this one is a hair remedy from Quincy, Gunlock or something like that. I've seen one in amber color. And those are pretty uncommon. Those are tough ones to find. I got the little doll's face with the glass eyes taped in place just to make him look real creepy. Like he's not creepy enough without. And the Dr. W.B. Caldwell's syrup pepsin, a real super common one, except that one's in almost a lime green color. Gunlock hair remedy, Quincy. With a big chip in the lip. That was a bummer. Oh, and this is the part where I gotta pause and tell you a story that almost killed me. This bottle almost cost me my life. I was digging in a trench, like I mentioned before, this fellow that owned the property butting up to where they were building the houses, carved out a trench about 15 feet deep and maybe about 20 feet long, and I was down at the 12-foot level, bent over down in this trench that wasn't more than maybe about 4 feet wide, and I was pulling out fruit jar pieces and I saw this guy sticking out, and I turned around to get my screwdriver or my digging tool, and before I could even blink, the entire wall had collapsed. And it was fortunate that I was standing up and on a slight ledge opposite, and I was buried up to my armpits in a blink of an eye. And at the same time, when it collapsed, I jumped, and I jumped with such force that I left my boots. I mean, I literally jumped out of my boots. I didn't, I've heard of that, people getting hit by cars and their boots are laying on the side, or their shoes, and one of my boots anyway was that I actually had to dig it out, but it slammed me against the opposite wall so fast and hard I split my lip. I mean, I was dazed and confused and in shock. And after that, I mean, I packed up my stuff and got the hell out of there. I mean, I almost retired from digging. And it took me a couple of weeks of really trying to figure out what the heck happened, because I prided myself for years on growing up dump digging, and you can always tell when it's starting to develop cracks or little pebbles start falling, something's moving, and it's working on a collapse, and you keep an eye on it, or you just back up, make room for it, and let it collapse. This thing went without me even seeing anything, no evidence. And I figured out what happened was because of that earth mover, ripping at the ground, unlike hand digging, I was unfamiliar with, working around heavy equipment. That was kind of a first for me, and especially at that kind of a depth. And what happens when they use those heavy equipment machines is they loosen the dirt for 3 or 4 feet back from the edge of where they just ripped out that that trench, and that's why these workers work in, you know, inside these metal barriers, you know, or so that the wall, if it does collapse, it's not going to bury them or kill them. And but it took me a couple of weeks of pondering on it to figure out where I went wrong. And so that bottle almost cost me my life. You know, it was like that bad boy. Everything else is really kind of unmentionable. That's a cool looking seal bottle, but I remember it was machine made, so it wasn't all that great. Straight-sided Coke on the far right there. That was one of, like I mentioned, 27 or whatever the heck the number ended up being. Oh, that's the L&M Quincy Coca-Cola bottle. I think that's a real rare duck. And I ended up selling that, and I don't remember getting a ton. I had one from Hannibal, from the local Hannibal Coca-Cola company, and it ended up getting broken during a move, and later I discovered in Johnny's book it was worth $1,500. Super rare. I was like, oh God, really? And it's machine made. The one from Hannibal was machine made. Quincy one is not. But yeah, a bunch of common stuff again. Nothing big whoop whoop here. And I may have come to the end of my... I did. That's the end of it. Hey, I'm glad. I'm glad you're glad, because I know you're glad. I've come to the end of my grandpa's slideshow. Although you're not done yet, I'm going to show just a few that I still have from dump digging in Quincy. Well, as promised, these are the ones that are still left over from the dump in Quincy. The maraschino bottle, I mean, it's got like a applied top, but it's weird. It looks like it's almost machine made. Forget about tool top. That's applied all day long. It must have had some sort of fancy stopper. I'm guessing, you know, European. It does not look American made at all. It's got those weird striations like you see in gin bottles, you know, that are vertical. If you could have vertical whittle marks, that's kind of what it looks like. But yeah, with a globby little seal on it. A very cool bottle. And Rose's lime juice. Apparently that was a favorite mixer. And again, I mean, applied top. I believe it's very British. The base looks very British. It has like a British patent number and a horseshoe or some damn thing and a dot. Definitely foreign bottles, but they made their way here. That's all I care about. I didn't have to go there to find them. And this Benedictine, you know, with the crosses on the ends. Boy, oh boy, I mean, this thing is heavy. I've had some gallon demijohns that didn't weigh this much. I have no idea how old it is, but it came out of this dump. I'm guessing turn of the century. Alrighty, and because my batteries are not holding a charge, I gotta go quickly. Just to prove, you know, they don't have to be ponnelled or worth $1 million. Nice little capers, you know, $10 on a good day, but I love these things. I'd dig them all day long if I could. Just never happens. The Mother's Friend from Bradfield Regulation Company, Atlanta, Georgia. This one's a tool top. The Mother's Friend. You know, I love these with this, you know, like this Zoophora, the woman's friend. You got the mother's friend, you got the woman's friend. The Zoophora Company, Kalamazoo, Michigan, USA. A nice late 1890s bottle, I'm sure. And the bugging is Iron City Chemical Company. Boy, it's hard to see that I there. Pittsburgh, of course. Although I think they're known more for steel than iron. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers. It'd sound funny if they were the Pittsburgh Ironers. We came to town to iron your underwear. AUGAUER'S Vital Drops, Chicago. AUGAUER on the shoulder. Only one I've ever seen. And I thought the neck and lip were damaged, but this is smooth. It's like I dug it up this way. I swear to God, I didn't polish it out or anything, which led me to believe I would expect it has a shaker top on it, and they basically did something to make the top fit. And if that's the case, it would be like Angostura shaker type bitters. And I found this online. Of course, I ended up having to get it. It's a advertising token. I don't know that you could really even see that well. It took a lot to clean it up so that you could even read it. But it reads AUGAUER'S Vital Drops for stomach pain, cramps, and diarrhea. And then it kind of repeats itself around the edges. But, you know, that kind of sounds like what stomach bitters were meant to cure, were stomach ailments. Stomach pain, cramps, and diarrhea. You know, so for my money, AUGAUER'S Vital Drops were stomach bitters. And I suspect you put drops in your whiskey. And then this guy, it's an absolute duplicate. I dug this up somewhere else in Quincy. No embossing at all. This was the paper label version. Or possibly just a generic whiskey. You know, I mean, these are sort of generic whiskey bottles. This one does not have any retooling or playing around with the neck or the lip. And it's slightly different on the, you know, a little bit longer than this guy here. But other than that, I mean, these are twins. They're identical. Yeah, so for whatever it's worth. Proton Nucleon. Wish I could remember. I didn't bother looking it up, but R&C Company, New York, Reed and Carnrick made these. Come in amber as well. And this cool little cobalt blue semi-automatic little schoolhouse looking type ink. And then this Larkin. How nice that this is not jammed and stuck in there from 100 years of being stuck in there. So many that are, and then, you know, it's kind of screwy that you can't remove the stopper. But yeah, ground neck to fit the original ground stopper. The big L for Larkin Company. Gotta love them. And then the Elysian Manufacturing Company from Detroit. That's a beautiful bottle, you know. And they come in, you know, different sizes. This one's a rather small one, probably 3-ounce size. Still, killer color. And then lastly, the matchstick holder. I never noticed before, but it's got this big blobby spill of glazing on it. It's like a clear glaze that got slopped on there. I've got a big old ovoid jug that has a similar kind of a thing going on. I'll show that in a video pretty soon. But yeah, no chips, no cracks, nothing wrong with it. Weighs about 5 pounds. That and the Benedictine bottle would get you through any barroom brawl, I'm sure. Anyway, there you go, before my battery dies. That's what I got left of 10 years of digging in that dump over there. Well, not quite 10, but 3 or 4 anyway. And there's still more there. It's just access, getting to it, you know.